Imagine having a personalized guidebook that is written just for you, that is available to you 24/7, and you could always look inside it and find the answers every time you are not sure of your next move. That's what we're talking about today. We're talking about your core values. These values are some of your deeply held beliefs that form the foundation of your attitudes and actions. And you hold them so close to yourself that they serve you as your personal compass. They help you make decisions at crucial and important times, but also in your day-to-day life. And the outcomes of these decisions may or may not yield the best result, but they feel right. And sometimes we just want that. We want to make decisions with confidence and not worry about the consequences so much, and grow in the process. And that growth leads to success in different forms. In this video, I'm going to talk about 5 ways in which these core values prepare us for success. And I think the last one is really important because that's the one we often overlook. Alright, so the reason why you should live by your core values is because it leads to a life of authenticity. The famous Socrates message, "Know thyself," conveys the same message. It means that you must choose a life for yourself through self-reflection and self-awareness. Because when you do that, when you choose to learn about yourself, you become more authentic and you start living in harmony with your true nature. It's the same thing that the psychologist Carl Rogers talks about when he talks about the importance of congruence and self-actualization. This means that there needs to be some alignment between how you see yourself and how you experience reality. Because when these two things are not aligned, you feel discomfort, anxiety, or other negative emotions. And this misalignment also creates a dissonance that can affect your mental health in the long run, which then leads to failures and bad experiences. So to live your life by your core values is to express your true self. It's about understanding your true desires and then aligning your actions with them. This also means that you are not measuring your success by societal standards, but by what is right for you, by whatever success means to you. Because as soon as your actions and your desires start matching, a few things happen. One of which is your ability to make good decisions. Now, a good decision may not always mean that you will have the best outcome. It simply means that you will be happy and content with the outcome because you made decisions aligned with your core values. In the book, The Paradox of Choice, Barry Schwartz talks about how our guiding principles reduce the stress of making decisions in a world of abundant choices. So unlike a few decades ago, we now live in a world where we have more options than we need. And the more options we have, the less satisfied we become with our decisions. Because every time we choose one option over the other, we basically pay an opportunity cost, and that opportunity cost reduces our overall satisfaction. And you pay this opportunity cost in small things, like while choosing which movie to watch out of hundreds of choices on your Netflix homepage, or while picking a particular packet of cookies over another. In a sense, every decision you make that is not aligned with your core values leads to less satisfaction. This simply means that it just doesn't feel right on a deeper level. And there's always a what if factor involved. What if I chose X over Y? What if I chose Y over Z? But if you know your core values, and let's say one of them is education or learning, which is definitely one of my core values, then watching a documentary on Netflix about the World War or world history may bring you more satisfaction than watching a popular movie that everyone else is watching. And this approach of using your core values as the reference guide to make decisions minimizes your regrets and maximizes satisfaction, which then gives you enough encouragement and confidence and the ability to try out things with a positive mindset. And when you have that, when you have the positive outlook and mindset in life, the most important thing happens, which is your personal growth, which is very different from how we generally think about growth. We tend to quantify growth based on outcomes, results, goals, achievements, and they are definitely great indicators of personal growth. But if our inner workings aren't truly right, then those things may not be sustainable in the long run. In the book, The 7 Habits of Highly Effective People, Stephen Covey talks about living life through principles. He discovered that in the last 200 years, every single piece of advice on success and self-help followed one of two major paradigms. The first one is something called the personality ethic. This is basically about learning a new skill or a series of techniques and applying them to achieve success. And it's also about how you appear to others. So essentially it focuses on external behaviors and techniques. In case of learning a new skill, Malcolm Gladwell talked about the 10,000 hour rule, which is this idea that if you put 10,000 hours into practicing any skill, you will master it. So for a lot of things, it is just about practicing and putting in the hours. But the problem with this kind of approach is that it is either superficial or case specific and doesn't lead to fundamental changes. But the second paradigm Stephen talks about applies at a deeper level. It focuses on becoming a person person who has certain values, and it's also called the character ethic. It's about changing your belief system, aligning your values with your actions. So for instance, it could be about going to the gym not because you want to look good, but because you want to be healthy, and you identify health as one of your core values. Becoming a person who values knowledge as opposed to someone who wants to sound smart. And in the book The Atomic Habits, James Clear talks about the same thing. He talks about the identity focused approach, which is this idea that achieving a goal means shifting from an outcome focused or process focused approach to identity focused approach. So for instance, let's say if one of your core values is staying healthy, but at the same time you can't quit smoking cigarettes, then applying different approaches would yield very different results. The outcome focused approach would be to focus on simply quitting smoking, which we know is not a very effective way to quit smoke. Very few people achieve success through this approach. And the process focused approach would involve things like strategies for not buying cigarettes or only smoking on special occasions. That might be somewhat effective, but it may not be a permanent solution. Whereas an identity focused approach would involve changing your inner mechanisms and your thinking and identifying as a person who simply doesn't smoke, because here you are aligned with your core values, which is to stay healthy. And there is a simplified two-step process for this, where the first step is to identify what your core values are, write them down and reflect on them. Reflect on the kind of person you would be if you made decisions based on them. And the second step is proving it to yourself that you can actually follow through by focusing on small wins, acknowledging them, and then occasionally rewarding yourself. It's also important to know that this change doesn't happen overnight and may feel like a journey in itself. And that's when it's also important to surround ourselves with people who also share similar values. Because the research in positive psychology seems to suggest that when our actions are aligned with our core values, they're likely to be genuine and meaningful, which then means that they create a ripple effect and enhance well-being and productivity for us and for the parties that are involved, which means that our relationships, whether they are personal or professional, get stronger. And this in itself can be a huge factor for success, because in the context of a career or achievements, they are absolutely crucial. The people we work with, recruit, or form professional relationships with have their own set of values, but when ours align with theirs, it leads to stronger collaborations, it leads to synergy and long-term commitments. In the book Delivering Happiness, Tony Hsieh talks about the experience of building the company Link Exchange. The company had a lot of ambitious people and it grew very quickly, but the problem was that the values of his employees weren't aligned with the core values of the company. These employees, they all wanted to make a lot of money in quick time and retire early, and that led to a bad company culture and a difficult long-term growth. It even came to a point where he did not recognize the people in his own company. So the lesson he learned was to grow slowly and hire people who share the core values of the company. And this approach does not only apply to big companies or institutions, it applies to us as well, because our long-term relationships are like investments, and they can have a compounding effect over time. But that's not all, because there's one more thing that I think is super important that I'm going to talk about now. But if you have stuck around so far and value the content, then you might want to give this video a thumbs up and follow the content, because if you did that, the algorithm might push it to other people who might be looking for this kind of content. Alright, so I was listening to the author John Gordon a couple of days ago on a podcast, and he phrased this big problem versus small problem that we face on the path of success as the telescope microscope problem, which I thought was very clever, because when you are looking at the big picture of why you are doing things the way you're doing them, you're looking through the telescope, and when you are looking at the day-to-day challenges associated with them, that's your microscopic view to gauge the problem. And it's really important to have both these tools by our side, because when faced with bigger problems, bigger challenges, we need to look at the big picture that is often aligned with our values. Is it in the service of other people? Is it to create some value for the society? Is it simply a way for us to be happy and be satisfied? And when faced with smaller tactical challenges, we need to look at the day-to-day actions and focus on them. Else we can very quickly start to live in a fantasy world. And this disconnect between the macro, the values, and the micro, the actions, creates frustration, disappointment, and a negative mindset. So we need to tune our vision every day to stay on track, and that's how we become more resilient. And that's the most important thing. We need to see the problems, bigger or smaller, as hurdles on our track and jump over them and keep going. And that realization and that commitment only comes if we are true to our core values. In the book Man's Search for Meaning, Viktor Frankl talks about how our values offer strength in adversity. His whole philosophy in that book is not about the absence of suffering, but the ability to find meaning within it. it suggests that our core values are not just abstract notions. They are really these practical tools that guide us through life's toughest challenges. And these challenges, they do not only come during tough times, but also when we are trying to achieve something, when we are trying to be successful. Alright, so if you like the content so far, you might want to check out some of the other videos on similar topics, and I'll see you next time.